Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Built to Scale. Are you wondering what in the world do I do in the US economy right now? That I have tariffs that seem to change every week. Not sure whether those tariffs will exist next week. Um, I've heard word of recession. I'm wondering whether I should go buy all my supplies, whether I should pre-purchase all my supplies and my inputs, or whether I should go buy that piece of equipment now, et cetera. You could be facing all of these, decisions. And in today's episode, Layton and I, one of our CFOs, who's also a fourth generation builder, we chat about our recommendations for how you should handle this economic environment as a construction business owner. That, yeah, there's, we are in a time over probably the past 5 years where we have not known something stable and static. And so, many of us are hardened, but at the same time, we need to know what to do now. And so Leighton and I provide some of our best suggestions as CFOs for construction business owners on what to do today. So if that's something you're facing, something you're wondering about, go ahead and listen in. This is likely going to be a two-part episode here. What we dive into, we're seeking to do about 15-minute segments, and we recorded well over, 30 minutes of content here. And so we're probably going to, put this into a two-part episode series. If you're interested in learning about how to handle the current economic situation and what to do in your construction business, listen in. Leighton, appreciate having you here, bud. That, you know, we've been discussing, we actually have been more recently discussing, on this series, profit fade, right? That how do we manage profit fade? How do we prevent it? But then also how do we manage it once it's occurring? And, some of the key themes that we've talked about or that we talked about were, accounting is an important base of information, especially when you're trying to grow a company and you have multiple team members. It's an incredible point of base of information that's needed to make good decisions. And I'm really interested for us to dive into this next topic because, the next thing that we're talking about here is how to make decisions in an ever-changing economic condition, right? Or in ever-changing economic conditions that we've talked about being able to make decisions when you have decent data, decent accounting data. And then there's the world that we live in that, yeah, you may have decent accounting data, but you have no clarity on what's actually going on out in the world, right? And I think for a lot of business owners right now, construction business owners, there are a lot of questions as to what in the world is going on with the U.S. economy. Am I going to face tariffs or not? How much are those tariffs going to be? How much are they going to affect my business? Should I buy equipment now or later? Should I buy supplies now or later? Will they be cheaper now or later? There's just so much where I almost feel like kind of progressing with business owners over the last 2 months. When all the tariff discussions started happening really fast, everybody was really hesitant to make a decision. And now it's almost like people are just feeling like, hey, we need to make decisions, but there's still a lack of clarity, but we've come to acceptance that our data point is that there's a lack of clarity, and that is our data point. We're going to move forward. That's a difficult time to be in. That they've talked about. Thank the good Lord that we all went through COVID, because I think business owners' resiliency is higher than ever before in probably the past 30, 40 years, right? But you know, tariffs is a big thing right now, right? And the news between when we record this and when this is released could be totally different, right? But generally speaking, assuming that, on a general perspective, what we're aware is that there's a 10% tariff on pretty much every country, and then China has way more. Um, Given this assumption, what would we say to business owners to do in the short term? What should they do in the next few days, the next couple of weeks to make sure that things are shored up? What is your perspective on this?
I'm uh, not a conspiracy theorist. I'll throw that out there.
Yeah,
I'm not. I don't tend to
but
be
I
an
am.
over.
It's
Yeah,
good.
I don't tend to be an overreactor, and I
Yep.
think that that's something that going through as a contractor, going through COVID, not freaking out and kind of saying, okay, what do I need to do to just keep surviving. What jobs can I continue to work on so that I can continue to pay my bills and feed my family and keep a roof over my head. And I do agree. I think that uh, coming into COVID, I'd had conversations with several of what I would call the older guard of construction that I'd worked with, and I was like, I'm fearful for the generation because there's a bunch of snowflakes out there that they don't have any grit. The first thing that's going to come around is going to knock them out of the business. And surprisingly, and COVID did, send some people under. However, I think that it reminded everyone, hey, this can come around every so often, uncertainty. And we need to not be overly assertive and aggressive with what we're doing with our money. We need to save a little cash in the bank, have a rainy day fund, and be prepared to use it when opportunity comes, because opportunity usually comes after some period of volatility. Um, and not be afraid and be able to be pragmatic about, okay, it's time to make a decision, and we're not going to be making decisions just for the sake of making decisions, or changes for the sake of making changes. I think I see a lot of people get into that where they'll hear some piece of news and it's like, okay, what do I have to do tomorrow? Well, maybe doing nothing is the right decision today. Um, but at least, being aware of what's going on so that when the time comes, you can say, okay, I see the opportunity or I see the risk and I'm going to do something now to prevent that risk.
I I think like I had a conversation, funny enough, with a business development manager for a large size general contractor in Houston, and I love the way he put it. He said, you know, I think anybody operating, and I think it's just important. This is a general advice. Over the next couple of years, prices of things are going to go up. To say exactly how much that is going to occur is very difficult to say. But statistically speaking, even though that there are changing economic strategies around, American production, prices will go up. That if you take a look at the S&P 500 index over the past 100 years, or the CPI index, the consumer price index, yeah, there's blips where it might run down for a period of time, but the trend is always up. The trend has never been down. So we need to plan for a world of ever increasing costs, right? And granted, there's the theories of, you know, yeah, but wages will go up as a result of American production going up. We'll have to see, right? That I want that. I think everybody wants that. I think I don't. I think everybody would argue that they want that. That if we can insource it into America, it'd be great. You know, but we need to assume that prices are generally going to go up. That's all that's going to happen since the inception of our businesses and time, that prices are going to go up. Prices may run up faster during some periods than others, but prices are always going to go up. And I think what I'm hearing kind of in the marketplace too is, hey, like, should I go buy my supplies right now? Um, I don't think that that's necessarily always a bad decision, but be mindful of the fact that those supplies, you also have a carrying cost as to storing them. That if you have to pay, rental or storage fees to actually, house supplies somewhere in a warehouse because you've bought, so much, as quickly as possible before, tariffs and all the application of the tariffs come in play, you're going to have a carrying cost. You're going to have shrink. You could have theft. People could rip those things off from you, right? You're going to have to inventory those things and pay one of your accountants to inventory them appropriately and make sure that you understand what is physically out there. Um, all different types of considerations to it, right? That like the answer isn't should you just go buy stuff right now, even um, you know, from an equipment perspective, hey, should I go buy my equipment now before tariffs come in? Um, you know, I'd say even one of the things that I'm considering about for most of our clients is we're still in an environment where there's 40% bonus depreciation, right? And there's all kinds of talks about it going back up to 100%. That hasn't happened. That hasn't been confirmed yet, right? So I hate to make any tax management strategies without a confirmed answer in regards to what the tax law is going to be, right? And so, um, you know, you might go buy a piece of equipment and actually you don't get the tax shield that you've always gotten on it, right? And if you don't plan for that, that might end up biting you in terms of cash flow later. Like there's multiple considerations here, right? But I think basically operating, at least in my perspective, this is my advice to any business owner, operating with a still mindset that yes, um, prices will go up. They always have. They may go up a little bit faster here pretty soon. Um, you know, American production is yet to be seen to increase as a result, in a significant way as a result of tariffs going into play. Um, we have to wait and see. But ultimately, I don't think we need to be like buying toilet paper and COVID, and going crazy there, right? Um, that actually creates bigger issues in the supply chain, and we need to just take it one bit at a time. Be aware of the data that's available to you, but unless you're sourcing every single supply from China, like one day at a time, right? That you don't have to pull a gun trigger decision, and it is nuanced for what your business can handle. If you happen to have a warehouse and great inventory, management systems, and you can buy those supplies and go ahead and get lumber, at a really great rate right now, might not be the worst thing. But again, you have to have all those pieces in play, right? Like, don't just go pull that trigger thinking, "Oh, it can skyrocket up here," right? At least that's my view. What would you add there?
I struggle with this quite a bit because I can understand. So I do think back to COVID, and the big thing that was like the hardest step to come by was switchgear, electrical switchgear for service panels, things like that. And you can't open up a building without power. And when you can't get that for 6 to 12 months, depending on what you're trying to buy, just because of the low supply and the high demand, that becomes a scary thing. Will my project get completed? If it's not completed, I'm not going to get my retention out of it, kind of a mindset. And so I can understand it from that point of view. However, I see a lot of risk in storing inventory, buying bulk with the assumption that the price is just going to go up because it might not go up. And if it goes down, now you're sitting on stuff that you have to use and you're not going to be as cost effective as the next guy. I would say if it has been in your model to order in bulk and then divvy out to your given jobs, you can continue to do so. But for the guy that doesn't have any experience doing that, doesn't have the terms with the suppliers to get a better, bulk discount or, good payment terms on when you do buy it, I don't know that that's an arena that I would choose to get into willingly.
Yeah, I mean, it may be something strategic over the long term, but I definitely don't think it's something to just go pull the trigger on right now, right? Making a fear-based decision. I guess what Lane and I are trying to advocate for here is not making fear-based decisions. It's making logical, wisdom-based decisions. And I think I was thinking through while you were talking that um, I think one of the best things that anyone, especially say a general contractor, but it also subs as well, is having regular conversations with your suppliers. Like, being in touch with them regularly and saying, what are you seeing? What should I be prepared for? Keeping in mind knowing which of your suppliers are more sales aggressive than the others, right? That they may be feeding you something in terms of communication data that may be prompting you to want to buy things, and you're going to have to assess that are they a bit more aggressive than others. But I think having those conversations that what's happening in lumber prices. Hey, taking an inventory on when you do a job that these are all of the regular parts and items that regularly you have to come across, and this is what you've struggled finding in the past. Do you have a good supply of these regularly? Like, are you maintaining good inventory of these because these are things that we've needed in the past and we couldn't find? And talking with your suppliers about those things, and at least having somebody on your team that's accountable for at least checking on that in regards to supply chain effects. Just as much as you might have learned to do that in COVID, don't stop doing that today. right? Don't stop doing that. And so I would really keep doing that. Just communicate heavily. But yeah, I guess just I don't mean to spin circles around this, but the idea that generally we're advocating don't make a rapid fire decision today. That I mean, even in the past, few weeks that, oh, tariffs are on and they're at this amount and now they're paused. And so if you go make, a rapid fire decision, you burn a ship, it may be really difficult to reel that back, right? And so um, generally prices are going to go up, over the long run. Short run, there may be some fluctuations, but generally prices are going to go up. That's okay to plan that way. Whether that be equipment, supplies, et cetera. But be evaluating your inputs, at all times, like what is happening and talking with your suppliers. I just don't think is a bad thing to understand, are they seeing challenges and therefore, yeah, okay, you might need to stock up on this particular item just to make sure you have it because your jobs are going to demand it, over the next couple of months. And it might not be a bad idea if it's kind of a low value type of thing, but you just want to make sure you have it. But um, I guess we're just advocating, right? And tell me if you feel differently. Just don't go pull the trigger too fast on something.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's things that you can do, like including a material price escalation clause in your contracts with your customers, uh, including a force majeure clause, making sure that you're protected from acts of war, acts of God, things like that that may delay your project. Um, if you've got a project that's imminent that you have a contract for that you know you're going to need the material and you want to lock in the price, I'm not saying don't do that. What I'm suggesting is if you don't have the work, but you're going to go preemptively buy a bunch of material that you don't know you're going to be able to use, I don't know that I would take that risk on, especially if that's outside of your normal course of business and how you go about doing your projects. I would maybe use my cash a little bit more wisely.
Yeah, I think one of the things, even as you were talking, is the reality that if you end up doing that, I mean, we've had clients where interest rates are still pretty high, right? And so they've had reserves of cash that we've been able to park into high interest, high yield savings accounts. And all of a sudden, if you have to deplete that, um, have to consider that, okay, if you're earning 4% interest on that cash and you expended that cash on inventory, you've just lost that 4% interest. And so that's an additional opportunity cost that now has to be taken into account that if you're worried about a 10% tariff, um, you just gave up 4% interest. The spread there between 10% and 4% of what you're gaining, is that really worth it to take on a bunch of other stuff, knowing that there's going to be additional carrying costs, shrink, et cetera, too? There's just so much that goes into inventory management. I think one of the things that I hear from people though too is equipment, right? That going and buying a truck, a van, even heavier equipment, like it's not getting cheaper, right? And it's not going to get cheaper. That the idea of all of a sudden switching on American manufacturing in a significant way, uh, that's a long time in the making, right? Like you don't just flick your fingers and or snap your fingers, I should say, and then all of a sudden it's there. Um, what would you tell to somebody that, you know, is considering buying equipment? Should they do something now? Should they not?
Again, I get back to what is my primary course of business. I don't look at everything through a tax planning lens. If you have work lined up and you need that piece of equipment and you're going to make more money if you own it versus renting it and you have the ability to go buy it, I would probably go buy it. You know, uh, if you don't have work lined up and you're going to buy it and park it, I probably wouldn't buy it. Yeah. And if you haven't been in the business of owning your equipment, I don't know that right now is the time that I would choose to go get into the equipment ownership business.
Yep, agreed.
Interest rates are still high. If you're going to finance the equipment, it's going to be expensive. I might, evaluate, is this the right course for my business to start owning my equipment versus renting it? And if the answer is yes, then start to accumulate equipment. But it's as straightforward as that.
I think even right now, what I'm hearing in the marketplace is most of the people that are making very rapid fire decisions are making them now. And so actually, even before tariffs have gone into play on goods coming into the States, that all the prices are already lifted too. So I don't even know that you're going to go get a savings out there now versus later because everybody is already pushing up demand temporarily. But yeah, you don't need to be sitting on stuff that um, if your business model, which as a general contractor or sub, you do have a particular business model as to how you make operating cash flow, um, you shouldn't be in the business of, yeah, you're going to store things and you're going to become, a hedging expert or anything of that sort that, um, there's companies with billions of dollars on their balance sheet that still struggle to do that successfully, right? That keeping it. I'm a believer in just kind of keeping it simple, stupid, right? KISS, just keep it simple, stupid. What has been working for you? Continue to move towards that goal and excel towards that and excel in that. And you don't need to go make some strategic decision overnight because you're worried about, a particular tariff. Um, I think though realizing not only material prices can go up, but the equipment prices can go up too. And if you lease or you rent, those contracts that you have that if they're about to renew, they're about to expire and you're about to renew, the prices are probably going to go up, right? And so factoring that in regards to your estimating too, that if you have to use those pieces of equipment on your jobs and you're costing those into your jobs, that making sure that you're ready to appropriately cost your jobs and estimate appropriately going forward, considering those changes. I just be mindful of that, right? That's probably a reality that those rental and lease prices are going to go up too, and just the cost of ownership as well. Hi, everyone. So, if you enjoyed today's episode and you found value, or it raised some questions for you about the next best steps for managing your finances in your construction business, please reach out to us at bradycfo.com. There's a contact page there where you can fill out, and that will come straight over to us. Either that, or you can personally find me on LinkedIn. My name is Mason Brady, and feel free to send me a message. And happy to chat and talk through anything you're facing today, and happy to provide some advice. So, thank you all. Appreciate it.